Good morning, it's Professor Streeter, and I'm going to talk about the essay prompt that I sent to you and posted on D2L on Friday. This is a short video, I think probably a two-part video. In the first part, I'll walk you through the prompt and the assignment, and then in the second part, I'll talk a little bit about how to put together a works cited page and how to format your in-text citations. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to put myself here in the bottom of the screen. This is the prompt that I sent to you, and you can find it here in the announcements, but in the content page. In week 3, we've got the link to the essay prompt. On Friday, the homework for this week is to submit an introduction and a works cited page. That's the homework for this week. And so you can look at the assignment prompt by clicking here. It takes you to the assignment folder, and there's an attachment. And then you click that, and this is what it looks like. So, Essay 1. I start by giving you some background, just sort of what we've been talking about in our class and what we've been reading together in the textbooks that I've ordered for you. So far this semester, we've been talking about the question of well-being, or what it means for a person to live well and fare well in life. It's something we care about, right? We all want to live well. We all want to fare well in life. Well-being is something we all think about a lot. But the question that I want to begin by thinking about here is, how do we identify well-being? For ourselves, for others, what are some general things we can say about human well-being? How do we measure it? What makes up a good life? What are the ingredients? What are the elements? What are the basic constituents of a good life for a human being? It's a big question. There may not be an answer that we can all agree upon, but it's a question that makes sense to all of us. And I think since we share so many experiences, since we share so much, even though there are differences between every individual, we share so much as human beings. The hope is, the hope for a philosophical ethics anyway, is that there is enough to say of a general nature that we can agree upon about what makes up a good life to make this an interesting topic, an interesting and useful question or area of inquiry. But keep in mind, in the background, one possible answer to this question is what's called a skeptical answer, that there is no basis for answering the question, right? There is no basis for identifying and measuring the basic elements of a good life. Human beings are too varied. There are no norms that apply across culture. There is no sense in which the human is aimed at any sort of measurable, identifiable good. We each individually have our own good, and there's nothing sort of more general to say about that. You know, that's a skeptical position that I think one question to ask is, like, how do we avoid the skeptical position? Is it possible to avoid the skeptical position? Okay, but so that's our question. What are its essential elements? What kinds of things all by themselves make a person's life better? That's an important question, because typically, in order to talk about ethical reasons for doing one thing rather than another, or in order to talk about the difference between right and wrong with respect to a particular course of action or a public policy or a law, we need to be able to say something about the good that we're trying to promote through our actions or through the life that we're living. And that's kind of the starting point for this course. What is the conception of the good that we as a culture, as a society, are trying to promote in our lives, through our laws, through our public institutions? Before we can begin to think about norms for right and wrong, the idea here is that we need a conception of the good, or we need to be able to talk about what we're talking about when we think about the good. Okay, so that's the background. And the topic then is, here's what I would like you to write about, okay? The background gives you some framework for the topic question. Can a person live a genuinely good life without taking the interests of others into consideration. So we've been thinking about the good that we're aiming at as individuals, but can we think of the pursuit of the good in purely egoistic, self-interested terms, right? Is it really possible to live well and fare well in life while devoting yourself exclusively to the pursuit of your own self-interest? Or does the goodness of life, does faring well and living well have to do fundamentally, essentially, with our concern for other people, our ability to take the interests of others into consideration? So this ties in to the question that we started the course with in one of your discussions about social equality and justice. These are also things we care about. We don't just care about our individual well-being, we care about social equality, social justice. So I'm trying to think about the connection between these two things in the topic question. What, if anything, does living a good life, which has been our topic in the book, what does it have to do with caring about other people, with things like desiring justice and valuing social equality? One possible answer is nothing. These are two different questions. They go in different directions, right? The pursuit of the good life goes in one direction, and the concern for other people and the desire for justice and social equality kind of goes in another direction, and they conflict with each other. These are sort of two conflicting desires. But it seems to me, anyway, a more plausible answer is that they have something to do with each other, right? In pursuing the good, right, this has something to do with our concerns for others, our concerns for justice and social equality. And the question is sort of how to explain those connections. Okay, if you really think they're entirely different questions, that's interesting, but then the goal of the essay would be to explain why you think that. Okay, so whatever direction you go in here, right, the goal of the essay is to defend or criticize a conception of well-being or an account of the good life by making an argument, right, developing a line of reasoning that leads to a conclusion that addresses these questions, the questions in the topic. By focusing on one or more of those central questions in the topic there. So in defending your conception of what it means to pursue a good life, right, you're making an argument that answers some of these questions about the relationship between living a good life and being concerned for the interests of others or caring about the interests of others. Okay. You can also think of your defense or criticism of a conception of well-being as a way of responding to some of the problems and the questions that we've considered in class or that you've talked about in your homework. Okay, so you can incorporate some of the work that you've already written, some of the ideas that you've already started to think about in your writing into your essay. Okay. Here are some other questions you can also consider while you're sort of trying to focus your essay topic. The topic that I've just walked you through, that's the goal of the essay. But as you're formulating your thesis and developing your argument, here are some other questions that might help you get there. Okay, so thinking about the Heathwood argument, is getting what you want enough to make your life good? It's both necessary and sufficient, Heathwood thinks. Is he right to argue that? Is it even necessary? Can I live a good life without getting what I want, without getting everything that I want? And even if I do get what I want in some sense, is that enough to make my life good? Is that sufficient? Look, if you agree with Heathwood's argument, this is a way of sort of focusing your essay topic on some of the readings, right? How would you respond to some of the objections that Schaefer-Landau raises to Heathwood's argument in his chapter from the Fundamentals of Ethics? If getting what you want is not enough, if you don't agree with Heathwood, or if it's not even necessary, then what more is needed? Right? So what more is needed than just getting what you want in order for your life to go well? Perhaps happiness. You might define happiness as getting what you want, but that's not the only way of defining happiness. So one suggestion here is that, I could get everything that I want, but still not be happy. So happiness is what is needed to make my life go well. Okay, but then that just raises the question, what do we mean by happiness? And is that enough? Is being happy sufficient and necessary for a good life? Is that the greatest good that a person can achieve? Is it the key to the good life? That's the kind of hedonist position, that happiness is the key. Happiness understood as sort of attitudinal pleasure and the absence of pain, of unnecessary pain. But is that enough? Is that the greatest good we can achieve in life? Or do we desire something more out of life than happiness? So if you read the pieces today for this week by Susan Wolf and Brad Hooker, all right, they consider all other elements of a good life. For example, meaning, right? We also want our lives to be meaningful, not just happy. And these seem to be different, although related, desires or aims or ends. And Hooker thinks of other sort of objective measures of a good life that go beyond just happiness, things that we care about intrinsically for their own sake, such as autonomy, freedom, knowledge. This doesn't come up so much in the writings, but some relationship with God, right? You might think that one's, ability to contemplate and commune with God or devotion to God is also an essential element of the good life, okay? Or at least contributes to the goodness of life. It goes beyond just a conception of happiness, right? Virtue, things like courage, justice, wisdom, temperance, are these qualities of character that are needed in order for a life to go well, or is happiness enough? Justice, right? Social justice, and tying in here to what I was suggesting earlier. Is that required for a life to go well in some sense? Okay, so what would you put on the list and why? Okay, I'm going to wrap up this first video here, and we'll come back and talk about citing sources and the format. But just quickly, the structure of the essay. Okay, it's a 5-page assignment. You don't have to answer all of these questions here. These are questions that are meant to help you focus your topic. Remember, the goal of the essay is just to defend or criticize a conception of the good life, right, that answers some of these questions up here in the topic and responds to some of the problems we've discussed in class. And you have to make reference to things that we've read. So the focus questions here below are meant to point in the direction of some of the things we've read. But you have to choose, like, what are the readings that I want to focus on in defending my conception of the good life, okay? So it's a 1,250 word essay that comes to about 5 to 6 pages if you double space it and print it in a normal 12-point font. I've given you some examples of normal 12-point font here, Arial, Calibri, Times New Roman, okay? Think of the essay as structured as an argument, okay? So there should be a thesis in the introduction, and I'll talk about the structure of the essay with you in class tomorrow. But then you're providing support for the thesis in the body paragraphs, and then by the time you get to the conclusion, the final paragraph, you're drawing a conclusion, right? Drawing out the implications of the argument that you've made. Okay, and then the essay must make reference to some of the texts that we've read together. So all citations must be cited using either MLA or APA format. We'll talk about that in the next essay. Here are some due dates. Okay, this week the introduction and the works cited page are due in the assignment folder, and I'll show you how to do that where those folders live in the next video. Then the following week, Friday the 25th of September, I'll ask you to submit a rough draft. As much as you can get written by the 25th, then I can give you more feedback. And then the final draft, the complete 5-page or 1,250 word essay is due by Friday, October 16th. So you have plenty of time to work on this and develop different versions of it and get some feedback from me. As long as you meet these deadlines, as I said at the beginning of the semester, you can always at the end of the semester come back and rewrite the essay entirely for a new grade. But first, you have to meet the initial deadline of October 16th for the 5-page draft. And I'll give you a grade, and if you're happy with it, then you can move on to the second half of the semester, because there'll be a second paper to write at the end of the semester. Okay? But so for now, just think about the steps. The first step is an introduction by Friday, and then the following week, developing the argument in the body paragraphs, and maybe thinking about the conclusion that you're going to try to draw, and then the final sort of full 5-page, 1,250 word draft is due in Friday, October 16th. Okay, I will pause here and we'll do another video just talking about the structure of the essay and how to do works cited pages and in-text citations. Okay.